Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T, and if true crime is your jam, and like me, you enjoy delving into unsolved cases, trying to figure out who done it, please consider subscribing. Also, if you find value in my content, please hit that like button. As the months tick by and Summer Wells remains lost in the land of the missing and unknown, the question arises, what if she's never found? It's a painful question to pose. Everyone, except for whoever's responsible for her disappearance, of course, wants to find Summer. But as time passes, we have to ask ourselves, what happens if Summer is never found? Can she still get justice? Can whoever is responsible for her disappearance be held accountable? Note that in this video, I'm going to use the word red rum for the actual word only because YouTube doesn't like the actual word. So when you hear red rum, you just need to spell it backwards to arrive at M-U-R-D-E-R. Corpus delicti, meaning body of the crime, requires proof that a crime took place before a person can be charged with the crime. When it comes to red rum, a body is considered the most crucial piece of evidence. The mere existence of a deceased body tells everyone something occurred, but the body itself can usually tell investigators much more. It can possibly say how and when the person died. But what happens when a missing person is never found, but foul play is believed to have led to that person disappearing? What do prosecutors need in order to show that a missing person has died due to someone else's actions when they don't actually have the body to prove it? What I'm talking about are no-body cases. It turns out that even though they are harder to prove, no-body cases can be won. In the United States, since 1843, 583 no-body trials have been held. Although charges without a body are rare, about 86% of no-body cases that go to trial result in convictions. Compare that to convictions for all red rum cases in the U.S., which is 70% according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. Prosecutor Megan Doyle said this, "Without a body, you need to make sure all your other evidence is overwhelming." End quote. Doyle is referring to direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. A no-body case requires strong evidence. In case you don't know, circumstantial evidence is defined as proof of a fact or set of facts from which one could infer the fact in question. If you found that confusing, let me tell you, you're not alone. Let me give you an example that will illustrate circumstantial evidence. Imagine that I see raindrops on your coat. I didn't see it raining, but I can conclude it rained because your hair is wet and you have raindrops on your coat. The raindrops and the wet hair allow me to infer that it's rained. That is circumstantial evidence. Direct evidence directly proves the fact in question. An example of direct evidence would be an eyewitness who testifies to seeing a suspect shoot a victim. For no-body cases that go to trial to be won, there has to be a wealth of strong circumstantial evidence and, better yet, some direct evidence. Evidence from someone who perhaps witnessed the crime. Most no-body cases that do make it to trial only do so after an in-depth and lengthy investigation. In the case of Summer Wells, that is what I personally hope is going on. I'm hoping that the reason we have yet to see any arrests is because the investigators are looking at all the evidence and talking to all potential witnesses. Former federal prosecutor Tad DeBaies said this of no-body cases: "The evidence in a solid no-body case tends to cluster around what I call the three legs of the stool. Most important leg of the stool is some type of forensic evidence, which includes DNA, such as blood, hair, fiber, and fingerprints, or technological evidence, including cell tower records, surveillance camera pictures, or some other tech that shows someone was or was not at a certain location." For many missing persons cases, investigators can look to the missing person's electronic trail. The electronic trail means things like seeing if the person has posted anything to social media since their disappearance, or if they've used a debit or credit card after the fact. When a missing person who tended to be active on social media before he or she disappeared suddenly stops posting and ceases to use their debit and credit cards, it's a pretty good sign that the person is no longer alive and is not just missing, but is in fact deceased. Those same electronic trails can also shed light on whoever may have committed the crime and then tried to hide it by hiding the body. The obvious problem with the Summer Wells case is that 6-year-old Summer didn't have an electronic trail. She didn't post to Facebook all by herself. She doesn't have a cell phone of her own. She doesn't have any debit or credit cards. Sadly, Summer is simply too young to have an electronic trail. So how can prosecutors make a case for charges against someone when the victim is a young child without an electronic trail? Although difficult, it can be done. Remember that former prosecutor Tad DeBaies I cited earlier? Well, he says the other two legs of the three-legged stool of needed evidence in a no-body case are confessions from friends or family where they reveal they know who the perpetrator is, and or the defendant's or the accused confession to law enforcement. With incredibly strong evidence like that, a prosecutor can establish motive in a no-body case and the involvement of the accused, demonstrating that the missing person isn't just off on a holiday, but is indeed no longer alive. So let's think about this in terms of Summer's case. Maybe someone saw Don Wells or Candus doing something suspicious somewhere on June 15th of 2021. Maybe removing a shovel from a truck, or removing an object wrapped in a blanket or rug, or maybe someone saw Candus speeding away from 110 Ben Hill Road in the direction of Kingsport, or in the direction of a nature preserve. Or better yet, what if one of Summer's brothers saw something on June 15th? Maybe Mom and Dad carrying Summer over their shoulders out to the car and then driving away. That would be powerful direct evidence. Remember when Don Wells' co-worker Dudley Agin said he heard talk of the boys telling someone that they saw their parents carry Summer out of the house and to the car? That could be the direct evidence we're looking for. You know how people say that Summer saved her brothers? Well, maybe the boys will end up saving Summer in a sense if they're able to shed light on what happened to her on June 15th. As potential direct witnesses to suspicious behavior that day, they could end up being the ones who ensure that their sister Summer gets justice. Remember 4-year-old Orrin and 3-year-old Orson West, the two little boys who were reported missing from their backyard in California by their adoptive parents in December of 2020, but let me call them by their birth names: Sincere and Classic Pettis. While Sincere and Classic's bodies have yet to be found, on March 1st of 2022, more than a year after the boys were reported missing, the Kern County District Attorney, Cynthia Zimmer, charged their adoptive parents, Trezell and Jacqueline West, with red rum. According to Kern County Superior Court records, both adoptive parents have been charged with 2 counts of second-degree red rum, as well as willful cruelty to a child and filing a false report. Along with charges of red rum and child cruelty against the parents, there are a number of circumstances in aggravation, among them that the Wests induced a minor to assist in committing a crime. Note that in addition to Sincere and Classic, the Wests have 2 other adopted kids and 2 biological kids. So it sounds like one of the West's other children, or some other minor, participated in whatever was done to Sincere and Classic that resulted in their deaths. This is how the indictment for that last piece reads. It is further alleged that the defendant, Trezell West and Jacqueline West, induced others to participate in the commission of the crime or occupied a position of leadership or dominance of other participants in its commission with the meaning of California Rules of Court 4.421A4. According to authorities, the evidence indicates that the 2 little boys were deceased for approximately 3 months prior to being reported missing. Despite not having the boys' remains, the DA is confident that she has a strong case against the Wests. It sounds like the Wests' other children were able to provide direct evidence about what happened to the 2 little boys, and that evidence is strong enough to pursue those charges despite not finding the victims' bodies. And just in case you're wondering, second-degree homicide is defined as red rum that is not premeditated. It's caused by the offender's reckless conduct that displays an obvious lack of concern for human life. So my hope for Summer is that the authorities will be able to figure out what happened to Summer through her brother's testimony and what they tell authorities they witnessed on and around June 15th of 2021. Let's keep our fingers crossed that even though the authorities don't say much right now, and we haven't seen any arrests, that the wheels of justice are indeed turning, and that law enforcement is busy getting all the direct and circumstantial evidence gathered and all their ducks in a row so that they can make a strong case once charges are filed. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories. So you know what I'm going to ask you. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. Share and leave me a comment.